Welcome to the Roger Hedgecock Community Forum. Today, my guest host, Senator Tom McClintock, with all the news you're going to want to know, and maybe some things you'd rather not know about state government.
Thank you, Roger. Tom McClintock sitting in for Roger Hedgecock. Roger's off in Alaska and has allowed me to live out my fantasy of being a talk show host for a day. So here I am, and stay tuned. At 4:30, we're going to have a guy who was at Ronald Reagan's side for 17 years, not only while he was in the White House, but in the years after that. Got to know him better than just about anybody except for Nancy. He was the Secret Service agent assigned to Ronald Reagan, not only when he was at the White House, but when he was alone at the ranch, and fascinating insights that he's put into a book that we'll be talking about at 4:30. But right now, we're continuing the discussion on the presidential campaign. And I have to tell you, one of the most interesting presidential candidates in this race to me is the guy that we've got on the line right now, Congressman Ron Paul. If you ever wondered what George Washington would be saying if he were on the campaign trail today, you listen to Ron Paul, and I think that's about as close as you can possibly get. Now, he's riled the Republican establishment, which I think is a good thing. They need some riling. And I have been looking forward to talking to him for a long time. So Congressman Ron Paul, welcome to KOGO.
Thank you, Tom. It's nice to be with you.
First obvious question. Start with the website, ronpaul2008.com. Folks can donate to the campaign there. They can sign up, I understand. What else do you have on the website?
Lots of things, lots of connections, lots of videos, and lots of opportunities. The big thing going on the Internet are these meetup groups, which are growing by leaps and bounds. It's even beyond my expectations.
Well, I want to talk about that in a few minutes, because I was absolutely stunned by the level of organization that you've got. But let me ask you first the campaign message. I mean, we had Duncan Hunter on earlier today, who's another sentimental favorite. He's a favorite son here in San Diego County. I'll ask you exactly the question I asked him. I truly am, right now, an undecided voter. I'm not real impressed with some of the leading candidates, so I'm doing more looking. What I want is a president who's going to defend our borders and respect our Constitution, which means I want somebody pretty much the opposite of George Bush. So what's your message for me?
Well, it's obviously very much constitutional. I believe in the literal translation of the Constitution, and I have voted that way. I've been in Congress, off and on for the past 30 years.
Well, why is that? We hear that a lot, but there's no why attached to it. Why are you so devoted to the American Constitution?
Well, the first thing is that's the only oath we take. When we go there, we don't take an oath to obey the Republican Party platform. We go and take an oath to obey the Constitution. So that, to me, is real important. So we have two things, the issue itself and also the rule of law. And if we want something done and we ignore the rule of law and the Constitution just to do something we want, then we've really undermined every good part of the Constitution. So, for instance, I don't particularly like the Department of Education. I don't think the federal government should be, and it wasn't ever authorized to run education. But if you can just ignore the Constitution for that, why should anybody be upset when they violate the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fourth Amendment, which are all being violated and nobody seems to be concerned? And yet many people have been taught in our schools that, you have to have a flexible Constitution. It can't be overly rigid. It's not supposed to be interpreted that way. And that's what I disagree with, and all my supporters would disagree, that, you have a law, you're supposed to obey it. If you don't like it, you change it. You amend the Constitution if you don't like it. So holding the government officials rigidly is something that the Constitution was meant for. The Constitution was written to limit the government, not to limit the people. It was to free up the people, and yet I think we have forgotten that.
Well, so what would that mean for President Ron Paul? What would you be doing differently than George Bush?
Well, the most important thing I would do is I would manage the military a lot differently. I would never go to war without a declaration. I would defend this country if there was imminent danger or there was an attack. But to go and occupy various countries and literally fight these wars, I think is unconstitutional. I think it's immoral. I think it's impractical. I think it's bankrupting this country. It's dividing us. And I was in the service for 5 years in the 60s. I know what happened in the 60s. So nothing ever changes. The Democrats got us into Korea. They got us into Vietnam. Republicans were elected to get us out of those messes. And here we are now. We've created this mess, even though in the year 2000 we ran on a program of no nation building and no entangling alliances and no policing the world, and our president won on that, and yet we're doing exactly the opposite. So I find this something that, as a president, I could change. I could say, well, this is an undeclared war. I don't have to continue to fight it. I would start bringing our troops home. Why not bring our troops home from Korea? They've been there since I've been in high school. And Vietnam we've done much better with them by having come home after that failure. We trade with them and talk to them, and they visit us, and we invest in their country. That's what my goal is, and I do think this is more of a George Washington approach. Washington advises no entangling alliances and trade with people and have peaceful commerce, and I think it works much better than coercion and force and initiating wars.
How about the border? We were talking about that earlier. We've got our National Guard over in Iraq when our own border is being routinely violated. What would you do about that?
Well, I think that is one of the rare responsibilities of the government that we totally ignore. So we do all the things we're not supposed to do and ignore the things we're supposed to. Not only are our guard units over there, but we've sent border guards over there. Took them off the border and sent them over there. We were going to train border guards in Iraq to protect borders over there, which misses the whole purpose of our government. We're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be protecting our own borders. So if you could save hundreds of billions of dollars by changing our foreign policy, we could bring our personnel home, and we could use them on our borders, and we could deal with this, and that to me would make a lot more sense. All the candidates now are for beefing up the borders, but nobody has a way of paying for it. I mean, we're deeply in debt. My way of paying for it is stop spending the money overseas and wasting it and getting us all messed up with all this adventurism and entanglements. So you would have the funds, you would have the troops, we would save money, we could cut the deficit, and we could protect our borders.
That's great. Let me ask you, you mentioned it earlier, the amount of organizing is being done on your website. I was at the state capitol in Sacramento a couple of weeks ago, of a hot summer's day, and there on the right in front of the Capitol is this little ticky-tack table, card table with three young people there. They were handing out Ron Paul literature and were the most enthusiastic volunteers I've ever seen. And as I talked to them, I discovered the material they were handing out didn't come from the Ron Paul campaign directly. They downloaded it from your website, printed it out themselves, and were proudly handing it out. And the other thing that struck me about them is a very eclectic group. There was one Republican, one Democrat, and one Independent. And what was one of the things that was really resonating with them was the platform that you just basically outlined here. So when you stand up and say, look, Iraq was an awful regime, but they didn't attack us, and if you're going to commit American troops to war, you ought to do it constitutionally with a declaration of war to be sure that the entire country's behind it, and then when you put your kids into harm's way, they're back with the full resources of the country. That seems to be resonating across a pretty wide spectrum of voters. The other thing that really got me as I talked to them was they've never been in direct touch with the Ron Paul campaign. They've done it all over the internet. They link up in these, I guess they're called chat rooms, and then they arrange meetings in all different parts of the state. So could you tell us a little bit about that and how that's working out?
Well,